We sure have a lot going on right now about when or whether it's safe to disagree with a person or a message, with a particular thing somebody's saying. And it seems that we have these signals about whether or not it's safe to agree or disagree long before we have enough information about whether we agree or disagree. And having signals that influence us in those ways ahead of time, before we even have the opportunity to examine accurate information about whatever particular thing, seems to be in discussion. It's a very effective way of preventing those discussions. It's not as effective as it could be. And we can decrease its effectiveness by collaborating with kindness and prioritizing intuitive listening. The amount of pain that occurs for so many people, myself included, encountering intersections where people are afraid to have any part of an honest and accurate conversation. Maybe we can dwell there for a minute, but so many of us have been having to dwell too continuously in that context. So I hesitate to suggest it. Eventually, we decide to shift in some way and identify more and different information, more and different kinds of resourcing. And then we can identify modes of mobility. That's great. That's great when that happens. When it hasn't happened yet, it's often a function of neurological injury. However you want to say it, neurological injury being extremely common amidst all of the systems known to cause neurological injury. And that separate from acculturated pressurization, acculturated being under pressure continually and consistently, continual stressors. It necessarily restricts what one can think about and what details one can consider and how comprehensively one's brain can function. There are certain kinds of supports and healthy environments and thresholds of safety that living organisms need in order to repair neurology and in order to understand things, in order to learn things. And when so many people in so many different environments must admit first that that capacity has been taken away, and then what do? Do you just come into conflict Do you just come into conflict with everyone around you? In many cases, that's unfortunately what occurs. How do we prevent that? How do we meet people where they are? How do we meet ourselves where we are? Sometimes we have to just really pray, hope, and light. And experience how that manifests. Sometimes we find ourselves in a conflict we can't bear to be in. We don't want to be in conflict with anyone, but there are some others who to be in conflict with them is extremely painful, extremely disabling, and many cases life-threatening. When we are navigating intensity, our bodies can rise to the challenge of manifesting. When we are navigating intensity, our bodies can rise to the challenge of manifesting fortuitous new capacities. That's what we were saying when the screen froze. My brain has had experiences of repair that everyone around me seemed to disbelieve in, particularly individuals with certain kinds of professional education. So when we find ourselves in situations it seems we could not possibly navigate, usually that factor is available, accessible, within reach, and certainly relevant in at least a number of ways. That many of us have been trained out of recognizing, out of even remembering. And many of us have also been in situations where to reach for those functions has been made a very violent kind of experience, or would cause some sort of violent response in some way. But when we know that this is what we're navigating, we know that this is what we're navigating. Sometimes we have the ability to shift where we're at, and sometimes we don't. We can be with that shiftless place for periods of time. We can nourish ourselves in diverse, different ways to support moving through that however we can successfully. And when we come together and compare notes about what we're all experiencing and understand one another to the best of our ability, we really put ourselves in a position to be able to recognize additional options as soon as they're recognizable, which is a very good position to be in when part of the chaotic apocalyptic landscape is that for some strange reason, some people, many people, possibly most people are not noticing these things. And if not noticing means that you are helpless and the situation is hopeless, and so you'd better follow the instructions of your local human trafficking organizations, then we all have to make decisions about how to proceed with most profound respect for all living beings in our vicinities. that's something we can do. That's something we have been doing. Now processing and verbalizing it more successfully.